up my agenda here. So I do want to answer just your general questions and answers. I think some of them I'll be able to help with through the slight redesign of the syllabus. But what I do want to let you know is that most important to me is kind of your health and safety and peace about this whole thing. We're not in a situation where I'm going to be able to say, oh, okay, you get an A versus you get an A minus. So at this point, you should rest assured that, everyone's going to do just fine in the class and we're going to be as flexible as possible. But because this is a lit review type course, I do want to make sure that you have everything that you need in terms of what you need going into your dissertation. So I do want to try and stick to that. So my most important pieces in regards to that are that we are doing the peer editing, that you are doing the study matrix, and that we're able to have some conversations around that. As far as the course literature, I'm going to have the PowerPoints there. We're going to do some small discussion boards, but I'm going to try to make that as light as possible. And if it seems like it's too much or it seems like it's unhelpful, I'd appreciate that feedback and we can continue to tweak and change. I do want to be as flexible as possible and also kind of understanding what you all feel is useful. The most important thing to me beyond that is just that we just continue to communicate. Almost all of you have been a part of a really strong cohort, and so you have those relationships. And so I just want to make sure that we continue to nurture that because you will be in person again in the future, and I want to make sure that you're able to foster that learning together. And so however we need to do that, that would be great. I will start with our syllabus, and I'm going to share my screen here. Okay. So, biggest changes. Our group facilitation, what I'd like for the group facilitation is really that we're just looking at these guiding questions. So in terms of our guiding questions, these are the 5 here. The topic of the review, theory used to frame the review, summary of key elements, etc. And we're going to do those in our discussion boards. In terms of drafts for peer editing, the first draft of that outline that I'm going to show you what that looks like today. Outline will be in the discussion board. The final lit review, I need to think about the way to do that makes the most sense. I honestly don't know yet. It may be just email. We may use discussion boards. I'm not sure. For the most part, everything remains the same. The presentation on the critique, I think is going to be an easy one that you can just do using VoiceThread or PowerPoint. That's really going to be up to you. I have designed the course as if we were going to be online anyway, so that will be fine. Let me check here. So you'll see in each of these, I've outlined whether or not we were going to be synchronous or asynchronous. The majority of our sessions will now be asynchronous just because there's so much editing and things like that. And we will be discussing back and forth via discussion board. Anytime there's a discussion board response, feel free to just record a video and leave it in there. Actually, I think that that's a really nice way of making things personal. And do a reminder. Yes, I absolutely can do a reminder of those synchronous course dates. It's my intention to put up something every week. So I will add in those reminders. And we will keep this same time as long as it works for most people for our synchronous course days. So let's see. Asynchronous for the next 2 weeks. And then on April 6th, we'll be back together. You'll note that on Wednesday, April 15th, we were going to have an online review anyway. That was a makeup day for the institution. I'm asking for 10-minute WebEx check-ins throughout the semester, the remainder of the semester, and I'll remind you of those. That's really, we're signing up for 10 minutes, it may be 2. I just want to make sure that we're in constant communication, that I'm answering any questions that you might have. If there's something else that I can help with, whether it's through the paper or as you continue to think about your research, I do want you to know that I'm happy to do that. Those are the big changes because so much of what we do is our writing. I don't have a ton. We will be spending a little less time diving into the particulars of different theories. And that's something that is not ideal, but I think that it's the best way to go in terms of moving what you need forward, and not making this too taxing. Are there any questions about changes to the syllabus? Okay. All right, let me stop that then. Oh, I'm sure there will be as well, but we'll make it work.
I have a quick question.
Yes, sir.
For the group discussion facilitation, have you already assigned an article and a group? Maybe I am still behind.
So I did, and they are in your week 5 PowerPoint.
Okay.
They should be listed there. But I will actually make that an announcement. Let me make myself a little note here. And they're not even groups, they're pairs. There's so few of us, so.
That's true, yeah.
And they're readings that are already assigned. So really at this point, we're talking about, 5 to 10 minute little debrief thing so that you are kind of helping to facilitate. I put some more guided language around how we have these synchronous meetings. I'm not too worried about it with our class just because our numbers are so small. It shouldn't be too big of a deal to try and navigate these conversations. Pairs. Okay. But yes, and you'll just be discussing those 5 questions. I have prompt, discussion board, guideline prompts. I can show you those. They're also in Dropbox. Okay. And so what I've done here is generally I'm going to ask you to consider 2 questions, 2 thoughts, and 2 quotations from our readings. And that's just to make sure that I am incorporating those in any PowerPoints or things that I do, to make sure that it's most relevant to the things that were salient to you. So hopefully that will help. In terms of your presentation, I guess I'll put that in quotes now. I would like there to be something in there where you're asking your peers a question, or at least opening it up to them. I'm not counting posts or anything like that. It's just a little bit of goodwill to show that we're on the same page in terms of what we're reading and things like that. A few things And so I've described that as a simple discussion. So for example, if you chose to put your guided questions, the answers to your guided questions in a short PowerPoint that you put on the discussion board, and then you provided one prompt for your peers to respond to, that would be great. If you choose to do a video and ask for video responses, that's fine too. You're able to decide that. Our primary methods of contact are going to be Blackboard or WhatsApp. I'm also putting course information up on my personal website, on YouTube Live and WebEx and Zoom, because I realize sometimes not everyone is on the SJU network. And given whatever your responsibilities end up being with regard to work or just family and life, I'd love it if you just were able to have easy access. I'm also going to do a quick 10-minute podcast every week, just talking about things that I'm hoping that you're focusing on, and maybe answering any questions, but all of that information will be consistent throughout. So this isn't a situation where you have to go to each of these things. My other class does have a WhatsApp. If I am correct, I believe that you all already have a group text, so you're good about sharing information that way. But I'm happy to share my cell phone number if texting is important to you, and I can easily respond back as well. Our online meetings, I put Zoom, WebEx, and YouTube Live just because I didn't know what was going to work in terms of text for everyone. And excuse me, in terms of tech for everyone, it seems like WebEx will be fine. I also had these options for online tools, but I also thought that we were going to potentially be doing this as a temporary measure. But now that I see that it's become long-term, it's important to me to just keep it as simple and as consistent as possible. Study matrix is something that we will cover briefly here. Stop sharing this. And we will move on. So any questions about what discussion posts will look like? Okay. Do we have any questions about the study matrix?
I don't have, I'm sorry, Dr. Parker, I don't have a question regarding the format of the matrix itself, just one of the sections in it.
Mm-hmm.
Two articles I consider to be kind of important. And is it a problem if I am having trouble identifying the research design, if it's not explicitly stated within the article? Is that a red flag?
So it can be a red flag. Are these qualitative studies?
Yes, they are.
Okay, so what I would put in the matrix are the things that you think it might be, and then maybe have an asterisk. It can be a red flag because sometimes some qualitative research isn't as rigorous as others, and so they aren't specific about the method. But some of that is intentional, so it's really hard to tell just from the broad description. It would serve you as a reminder to then go back. So let's say these are articles that you feel are important, and then as you're writing your lit review, you really want to bring those issues to the forefront. We have to be able to contextualize that design in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And so you want to make sure that you're able to explain it. You can't write in a formal literature review that it's unknown,
right?
But perhaps it's a thematic analysis and they didn't use those words. That's not something that we really look at because it doesn't follow one of the specific traditions, but there's the middle ground in there. We would have to just revisit it.
Okay.
That's
all right.
Question.
Sure. Thank you.
Other questions? So when you think about, you've looked at an article critique and you all did the PowerPoint where you stuck it into the discussion board, and then you also have done the study matrix. What did you prefer, if you have a preference, the article critique process of taking those notes or using the study matrix?
For me personally, I like the study matrix. It's been quite helpful to me. I felt like I was starting something like that very informally when I first started doing my readings for my new research topic, very rough. So I tend to be more aligned with the format of the study matrix. It works for me.
Carrie also is aligned with the study matrix. I like the study matrix for the sake of organization, especially. I think that the keywords help. I think it allows me to quickly go back and forth and reference, and there's no right answer to that. Exactly. In terms of keeping it organized, the best way to do that is to have some sort of system, and I find having the study matrix is a very easy way system. I ask because it's really important during this process that you figure out what works for you and you stay consistent. So try not to go back and forth between longer narrative things if that's not you, and the study matrix, because you'll find that you're making double work for yourself, is really what it comes down to. So just going to go over a few things today, and I'll share those with you. Did I just miss a comment? I think the matrix.
I'm trying to keep my mic off because I hate when people do that. I was saying that it makes it really easy to do the comparison when you can look for specific, like target specific information, where I found that much more beneficial than that PowerPoint document that we were using, because everything was just sort of laid out. Although it was great information, maybe you do that with specific articles where you lay it out like that. But just for general, overall keeping track of things, I thought that the matrix was just a nice way of organizing it. If it could alphabetize itself, that would be even more wonderful.
I know, right?
It's like 30 articles in it, and they're all out of order. So
yeah, so
I wonder though if there's a way to do that in Excel.
Definitely in Excel, but I'm not moving it now.
No, I hear you.
It's where it is. But so I started just collecting articles that I think fit, but I haven't necessarily read through them all. Like I did an abstract and like keep or toss kind of a thing, just based on the abstracts that I read. And I just add them into the matrix as I find them. And so when we do submit it, if there are like, I said 30 titles, there's probably 30, close to, if not. But obviously they're not all filled in because I haven't sifted through them yet. It's just like the beginning process, right? So that's fine when we submit it to have like all the extra stuff on there.
So yeah, you can have as much as you want. I'm gonna look for the 4 and the 8.
Okay.
But if you are already starting to use it for all of your literature and you have things in there, that's great. Then you can just submit it as your favorite.
Right now, the ones that I think are most appropriate to my research. Like I said, I haven't read through them all. I just have been collecting them there so that this way I know as I'm reading through them, I kind of can sift specifically for that information to see whether or not it's going to, help my argument or, my research or be a waste of time, in which case you can indicate that in a separate column. But just for the sake of collecting things, I have found it really helpful.
It kind of goes back to Letty's point when she was trying to figure out the research design. You can look at this database, and at one point I think I've coded mine even green, yellow, and red. So I could decide, okay, who was making the final cut. So when there were things to eliminate, then I was able to do it that way. All right, so just a very short PowerPoint here, just some upcoming things. I would like you to identify that dissertation for your lit review critique. And I just really want the citation. So I'll place something in the discussion box for that, so then everyone will see what that looks like. More about the lit review critique. Yes, so I have a template. I will show you what that template looks like, and I pretty much just want you to answer those questions. Again, I'm going to have a discussion board up, and I'm going to ask that you can either use VoiceThread, you can use PowerPoint with video, or you can simply use video. I'm expecting these to be very, very short. I believe it's 5 minutes of a presentation, just so folks can get introduced to what that literature review looked like, why you chose it, and whether or not they are individual. Yes. And what you thought of it. So we've done the article critique. This is just a little bit bigger. So that'll give you something to look at. But we will go over that critique template. Monday, March 30th, I want the larger study matrix, and then your draft outline, of which I also have a template. So you won't be just creating this out of thin air. You'll be able to look at that. Yes, you will be looking at a dissertation that matches your research interests, or at least the interests that you agreed to in class so far. If that has changed, just let me know so that I'm not surprised. Carrie asked if this could be searched from the library resources, and absolutely. Either library is a great source, or just Google Scholar. Yes, on the SJU site, you can actually look through ProQuest dissertations. What I'll do is I can make a little video and I can post it of getting to that link and doing a dissertation search, if folks will find it helpful. And then you can hopefully use that kind of plug and play to get those things. Absolutely. So as I've done in all of our classes, week 1 and 2, we talked about what we were going to study. We have talked about theory, with an asterisk, because things have started happening. But at the same time, we've been looking at what's happened before, right? So you've been doing this through your study matrix. We have been practicing looking at various studies and critiquing them and things like that. So now we're still looking at those studies, but now we're starting to think about what we do with all of this evidence, right? And so Galvin and Galvin helps us to think about how we organize and then how we generate conceptualizations summarizing our articles. And so talking about tables, this is the study matrix, right? So the study matrix, of course, isn't going to be your literature review in the same way that an annotated bibliography is not going to be a literature review. It is your roadmap and a quick way for you to look at things. If I had to add another tab to this, I would actually suggest that you put in some direct quotes. I'm not suggesting that you do that right now, but if there was something that really stuck out to you, I wouldn't want you to lose that. But making sure that you have your correct reference, that you know about the participants, the research questions, the designs, etc., are going to be really important here. And you all have done that. So we had a conversation about the note taking, so I'll skip over that. So in terms of how we start to group and organize our sources, so now you've got 4 things that you've looked at pretty deeply in addition to all the other reading that you're doing. Well, we really want to look at similarities and differences. So everyone in here was in qualitative, so when you think about finding the big ideas that connect all of these things together, we're going to put that qualitative hat on again. So you can organize by method, you can organize by theory, by topic or focus, by findings, and by other big ideas. Some folks do variables, for example. Some folks do institutional type, all sorts of things like that. When I am discussing this with my seminar students, who are working on their dissertations or dissertation proposals, I feel that we organize our sources at one point or another by all of these things. You have a theoretical framework, so you are going to want to organize some of your literature by theory. For this class, the bulk of it will be by your topic or focus, followed by your findings, followed by your method. That's what I would say. And the only reason that I'm saying that is because we're working with such a small group of articles for the lit review, if that makes sense. That is not, I don't want to limit you in your thinking, but for purposes of the assignment, that's what I'm going to be really looking for. If you did it all by method, I would have findings that are all over the place, and it's very, very difficult for you to draw any other conclusion other than many authors have used this method to explain a phenomenon. If we only look at theory, half of your articles will be purely theoretical and not research articles, which is a problem for us. So the findings are going to be real key here. It's how we create our subheadings most times, and also topic or focus area. And those are usually intertwined in a lot of ways. So you have your topic, and then you got your, positive findings, not so positive findings. You go on to your next topic, and so on. So one helpful way to do this is when you think about that tag column, that kind of keyword idea in your study matrix. And so what's good about this, and the reason why I talk about it after the fact, is because I want you to think about what first emerged for you when you wrote those things down. So that first kind of gut feeling, that's generally how you will end up writing the lit review, because that's what came to mind first, rather than trying to have this convoluted explanation as to how we got to a specific theme. And so to do that, you're going to want to think about the themes that emerged, not just in qualitative finding, but a better word, I guess, would be what big ideas emerged while you were reading the sources. Sometimes these are in findings, sometimes these are in the way that the study is conducted, but what really stuck out to you. There's a reason why you pick certain articles over another. What similarities or differences do you find in your studies? This one is really important just because there are times where you're reading, right? And you find something else that seems interesting, something else that seems interesting. And you need to be able to find a way to make this digestible. Otherwise, for some topics, you can be reading for the next 5 years, and we can talk about all of the things that exist, but we need to be able to organize them. We do that by looking at how the studies speak to your purpose and your guiding question. So if it doesn't speak to it, then you need to find a reason why you have to have it. Resist the urge to explain everything there is to know about the subject. We're going to do a little overview of the subject, in your introduction, to make sure that folks are on board with how you define the topic. But really resist the urge to explain all of that with all of this historical documentation, because then honestly, we're 30 pages into a large lit review without having pushed your argument forward. If you're having trouble thinking about how you identify themes, it might not be your inability to do so. It may be that you need to think about the articles that you're collecting and why are so many authors talking about things in so many different ways. So we've talked about looking at the citation numbers and looking at how many people cite other things and the benefits and challenges of that. But if you're all over the place, then you have to wonder what it is about your organization that hasn't led to some of those puzzle pieces coming together. And so you'll want to ask yourself some questions about that. So when you think about your themes and organization, you can consider how we plan literature reviews. And so here's a Carrie, I tried to answer you and stop the video, so I'll answer you just after. All right. So, Carrie, to answer your question about the color-coded Post-its, so I use those when I'm coding for qualitative themes, but I do think that it is a good way to organize a literature review. So I've done the green, yellow, red, just on an Excel sheet, or I use word tables when I organize. And so I'll color code it. Green is, I absolutely think this has to go in. Yellow, I'm still on the fence about. Red, I don't think that it's going to go in, but it's one of those things that I needed to have read to know type of thing, so that I can go back. And sometimes the yellows turn to green, you know, we change our minds over time, but that's how I do the color coding. But the way that is described here, I think, is also a great way to consider your themes, because then you're taking those little snippets that you put in the study matrix, and you can look at it across articles and then come up with some sort of overarching theme or summary that you have. So I have something that once we're off, I'm going to ask that you try on your own. And so this is a thematic matrix. So what you're going to do is you're going to write a few themes that emerged in your readings. And that can be tags, it can be something else that you were able to identify, and you're going to write down the study names. So this way, you're going to be able to look through that. There's also the storyboard method that was just described, which is using Post-its and you're writing the key points down. So that way you're not looking necessarily at an article title, which we know doesn't always match what the article is, but you're looking at those main points, and then you're using those main points to create kind of families of articles. Again, this is going to be very small because we're working with a small amount of articles, but hopefully getting into the habit early will allow you to do this with the data that is your literature. So the point of this is making sure that your sources are relevant, not just to your field, but most importantly to the story that you're trying to tell, because we're trusting that you're the expert in this area that you have chosen, or that you're that emerging expert. And so you know enough background information that you're able to tell us that story and lead us in the direction of where your study needs to go. So we're not discussing with a partner. I need to change that. But this thematic matrix here is something that I will have in the content section. And just throughout the week, I'd love it if you were able to mark down some themes and see where your studies align so far. Again, we've got 4 studies that were in the study matrix, so we may not have commonality within themes, but assuming that you have read more than the 4, I'd love it if you just started to think about where those things fall. Another way to consider this is if you're looking at the doctoral handbook, in your literature review section, you're going to have some subheadings around the topics that explain your lit review. So yes, we have theory. Of course, you're going to have a teeny bit of history, but as far as your topic goes, there are subtopics. Let me think about someone's topic. So Carrie, in terms of teacher preparation and diversity education, you can look at the tenets of teacher prep through perhaps in a state accrediting body or national accrediting body. You can look at teaching in diverse environments and the differences in population demographics versus teacher prep demographics. There are all sorts of themes that can come out of those pieces, and so you want to make sure that whatever story you tell, you're able to capture it using your literature. So again, are we incorporating the thematic matrix into our study matrix? We are not incorporating it per se. The study matrix is your roadmap, right? The thematic matrix is a tool that's going to actually help you write your lit review, because the thematic matrix is showing you how you might create a table of contents. Let's say that you're writing an edited book, and all of the literature that you're reading and sticking in your study matrix are submissions, your chapter submissions from a variety of authors. Your job is to organize their stories into one that captures what it is that you hope to say in your book. So the thematic matrix is more of a step 2 tool. After you've read and understand the studies in your study matrix, we're taking those big ideas and we're organizing them into themes. Does that make sense? Using your self-created study matrix. So when you practice, yes, I would use the articles from your own study matrix. And so again, you do have 4. It might be helpful to look at some of the other things that you've read as well, and just plug them in and see if you can start to organize things by theme. So, for example, Letty, if you have a number of qualitative studies that talk about microaggressions in the workplace as they relate to the LGBTQ community, perhaps that's one theme that you would be able to look at. And so while you may only have 4 articles for the study matrix, you may have read 8. They kind of fit into that. So try it out to see, oh, okay, I'm seeing where these things align. I'm seeing where there are gaps. What it's going to do is it will be a checkpoint for you to see if you're reading articles that one, are totally alike in findings, methods, so on. In contrast, you may have articles that are totally coming from different perspectives, and so it's hard to kind of create this story. And then others, you may be at a point where you're starting to see various themes that you can organize, and that's really good because that's helping you to realize the story that you're hoping to tell. Does that make sense? Okay, good. All right, so that is our brief PowerPoint here. See what other tools I had for you today.
That thematic matrix something that we're going to complete and submit. I just want to make sure I'm clear. I don't want to miss any deadlines for any assignments. I know that's a big thing for me.
No,
Just
I totally understand. This for me is not a submitted assignment. This is something that I'd like you to practice because I would like to ask you about it the next time that we chat.
That's probably why I had so many questions, because I just wanted to make sure. So we're looking at our own documents that we've been collecting and reading, not just the four that so far in the study matrix, but all the documents and how they're related, and just sort of put them together by themes.
Yes, exactly.
Sorry for the questions.
No, not at all. It's a very good question. I don't feel like it would be helpful for me right now to have that as something that you had to submit, because you're going to continue to add to your study matrix and at the very least double it. So I just want to make sure that you recognize early on whether or not you have things that can align, because if you have things that don't align at all, it's very hard to tell that story. And essentially what we're doing then is kind of more like a book report, right? Because you're just saying this article said this article said this. There's no synthesis that we can get from that.
So as you do more research and you continue, locating articles that fit really well with your own research study, will, as additional themes emerge, or I guess they should emerge, right? As the more literature you read, are you going to keep articles? Would you suggest keeping articles in multiple themes so that as you're writing your lit review, an article might fit 2 or 3 separate themes? Or do you want to really classify them to where, are they like cut and dry, like here's where it goes?
So that's a really good question. Some of them are very cut and dry. There are others that are not. I'll give you an example. So I had one article in my dissertation and some articles that came out of that was a meta-analysis. And so in addition to summarizing some of the core literature, it had findings that were based on different articles, and then it had those synthesized findings. So I was actually able to use it in 3 ways. I was able to describe background information, and so a part of that was early on in my literature review. And then I would pull from specific articles that supported some of the other subtopics, and then I also used it for the synthesis. So it really depends on the article. My rule of thumb is that the smaller study, generally the less weight it has in your literature review. And the reasons for that make sense, right? Because if we have, a sample size of 7, it's very hard to make that the be all end all of an argument that you're using to conduct a full research study. By the same token, if you have this huge study that was nationwide or something, it may need to be more than just a bullet point of a subtopic in your literature review. All right, so I'm going to pull up our critique of the dissertation here, of the literature review. All right. Little buddy. Okay. So here we go. We're going to be looking for a dissertation. I'm not giving more points or anything on whether or not this is dissertation that has been done in Dale before. My main reasoning for that is because most of you are doing studies that I have not seen in a Dale dissertation that I'm familiar with. So I don't want you to feel like you have to use one that the department has done. So the big piece is the written critique, and basically it's all of these things here. I want the purpose, the framework, your topics, and summarizing any key takeaways. All of this is 2 pages. So be concise. It's hard to do because these literature reviews are so long, but that's what writing a literature review is all about, right? Is taking these big ideas and studies and making them as succinct as possible. So you'll be practicing that here. So you're doing the summary. We get the summary. Everybody has done that ad nauseum. Now we're going to critique. So you're critiquing the comprehensiveness. And what do I mean about that? Here I'm looking for sources, if those citations were relevant, and you know how to look for that, right? Because we're looking at what those big ideas were. I'm hoping that from this, you will be able to see that some folks do this much better than others. There are citations that are very well organized by themes, and then a piece and a quote. I don't want you to be in that latter group when you're writing yours or when you're writing your final paper for this class. I want to make sure that your citations are relevant and useful. And seeing if the author commented on the quality of the sources. And so you'll be looking for words like rigor. You'll be looking for justifications throughout the literature review as to why certain articles are important to the research that is going to be conducted. And then also, you're doing a little bit of evaluation on writing. Oh, if you're not able to locate one from Dale, what do I recommend? It's a great question. I am okay with you looking at most university dissertations. I will tell you there's going to be a wide range of page numbers and things like that by university. Anything that I feel is from an accredited institution, I'm okay with. If you have questions on whether or not that's the case from a dissertation that you have, just send me an email and I can tell you pretty quickly. Absolutely. So, and then finally, you are going to comment on whether or not the review motivated the work to be done in the dissertation. Like, do you buy it? This is really important because this is what's going to happen in your actual dissertation proposal defense. If you've convinced me of the story and supported it with research to show me why it's so important, then I'm on your team, right? And so that's what you're going to decide. Was this believable? Is this persuasive enough? Is this a compelling argument? And then again, identifying at least one. Most dissertations are going to have plenty of opportunities for improvement, so you should be able to figure that out pretty easily. As long as you have these, you'll receive full points for this assignment. In terms of the presentation, I am giving you a template for the critique. This says 8-minute presentations. As I mentioned, this probably will end up looking to be about 5 minutes, but I hadn't changed it before everything kind of turned on its head. I'm not giving you any 2-minute warnings or anything like that because these are going to be videos or PowerPoints on Blackboard. So don't go over 8 minutes, but if you're at 5 minutes, I'm okay. Questions about these assignment guidelines? When is the critique due? It's in the beginning of my original PowerPoint. If I don't say it after I go through this part, remind me, okay, Carrie? All right, so this is just your template, and this is going to be on Blackboard. Title slide, and you're gonna do these bullet points. So basically, you're just answering the questions. And I won't go through all of these, but each subject that I need you to answer has a header here. these are comments on that. Okay, and that's it there. Now let me see here. Okay, the presentation and write-up is April 27th for the critique of the dissertation literature review. Absolutely. Okay, so that is all for me this evening. What I'd like you to do is, if you can think of any questions that you have about class, about the syllabus, about any requirements, so I can make sure that that's crystal clear for everyone, and you want to let me know that, please do that. And then if you can look at that thematic matrix, that would be great. I will put the groups up on the announcement so everyone can see that. And our first two groups, I believe, are next week. We will not meet in this modality next week. Let me double check this for you. Next week is the 23rd. Yes, so we are asynchronous. So group 1 and group 2, whose names I will post. I can, Anthony, in just a second. So our group 1 and group 2 will post their, 5-minute discussions about the articles that were selected. And these articles are articles that are due in the reading. So the first group is Kennedy 2016, and I believe that reading was due today. And group 2's reading is the Billingsley and Bettini, both all in Blackboard. Now, to circle back to the tag section of the matrix. So what the tags are to me are their keywords or the big ideas for an article. So in many articles, you'll actually see something that says like keyword, student success, critical race theory, what have you. And these are supposed to get at the gist of the article so the individuals who are looking for an article can find it. But more than a keyword, it's the general idea. Yeah, exactly. And so we're going to use those tags to help us figure out what the big themes are from articles in the matrix. And that's one of the ways to help you organize that. All right, so with that, I am going to close. Are there any questions?
Partha, I just want to make sure that I'm doing the completing the study matrix correctly. I feel like I might be writing a little too much in it. Is it okay at this point? If I feel, or is it supposed to be brief entries into the columns? Any suggestions?
So that's a good question. I think that it needs to be thorough enough to get at what you need to. My rule of thumb is that if you're cutting and pasting big chunks of text that you haven't summarized enough. So bullets are good. These should really be a couple word or sentences for like each item, but we're not like if you got paragraphs in there, then you can probably distill.
Okay. Okay. In some parts, not in all of it, but I believe, I guess, in the findings part.
Oh yeah, the findings are really hard. So one thing I would say is you can have, especially for the qualitative stuff, is which I'm guessing,
Yes.
it could be like certain theme and then like a couple of bullet points, because a lot of qualitative articles, they go on and on to make sure that you're capturing that answer. A quick place to go that's helpful for that is if you look in the discussion section rather than the findings section of the article, because every author is forced to summarize what those themes are there. And so that may be helpful.
Okay, will do. Thank you.
I would also, just for yourself, maybe put down page numbers so that you can really dive into those thematic definitions. If it's something that is complex, might be helpful.
Okay.
Carrie, thanks very much for that feedback. It's really, really important to me that I make this as as easy as possible during a really difficult time. Like, I just want you to make sure that you get the quality that you've invested in, but I also don't want it to be taxing because this is a difficult, unprecedented time for everybody. So anything that I can do to help you with that, please, please, please let me know, because I'm playing it by ear as we go along. So please let me know what works and what doesn't. Any other questions before we sign off? Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. I'm already missing being able to see you in person in class, but I'm so glad that you were able to get on. This recording will be posted on Blackboard along with the other items that we discussed. And then I know I'm hoping for next semester too. So let's keep our fingers crossed. Everyone stay safe and healthy. And if I can help in any way, have a good night, okay?
Thank you. Have a nice night.
Thank you. Good night. Be well, everyone.
Have a good night.
Guys.
Bye.